1969 Lamborghini P400S.
Miura.
Oh God, it's too much. Hi, my name is James. This is my Lamborghini Miura. It's a 1969 P400S. I was born in Athens, Greece. My father worked for the U.S. government. We basically were a typical middle-class family. I definitely was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. We moved back to the States in the late 70s, and I went to high school and later on went to college and graduated. Unfortunately, I graduated during one of the worst recessions in our history. And I could not find work. I studied to be a designer, and instead I ended up in the construction business. Those were rough times. In DC, where I was living, you had to make, at that time, about $36,000 would have been a half-decent salary, and I was making about $6,000 a year. So I literally started from rock bottom, reached to the level that I'm at today, which is basically still in the middle class. I'm not one of these guys who typically owns a Miura. I bought the car in the year 2000 when it cost $60,000, and I had a loan for that, and it seemed like a huge loan to me, and it took me many years to pay it off. To this day, it makes me appreciate the car even more. Purchasing this car was surreal. It just was a dream come true, but in the same time, it almost seemed like just that, a dream. I used to drive the Miura every week. I would even pick up groceries with it. I would take my Labrador puppy for drives in it. Literally, he'd sit on my lap and I would drive him around. So it was something I actually enjoyed frequently. It was not a trailer queen. So this car is driven fairly regularly. I try to drive them once a week or every other week, but that is so important to keep them running in tip-top shape. And it just basically lubricates your seals. It's just very, very important to run them. And I think anybody that has a trailer queen is going to have issues sooner or later with a car. Driving it for me is a joyous, incredible experience every time. It's never redundant. It actually is an emotional thing because you've got the sound of the engine behind you. You have this beautiful view in front of you. It's like driving the Mona Lisa down the highway. I have a Lamborghini Countach. It's a 1981. I have a Ford GT 2005 supercar, a Ferrari Boxer 512 BB, and they're all special in their own ways, but this thing is exceptional in the fact that it is so immensely beautiful to look at. It just is very different than the rest of them in the sense that it's much more visceral. It's, in my opinion, the most beautiful car ever made. When you're in it, you do have that sense because no matter which direction you look at, you just see beauty everywhere. Driving the Miura is a very raw experience. The steering's fairly light and it communicates very well. The brakes, of course, are nothing compared to today's cars, but back then they were probably the better, if not best, brakes you could find. It handles very well. I know there's so many myths about these cars, but if you have plenty of gasoline in the gas tank, which is in the front, and that equalizes the weight distribution, the car handles really well with today's modern tires. I run Pirellis, and you'd be amazed. It will actually throw numbers like 0.93 Gs, which, you know, is really good for a 51-year-old car. It's a torquey engine. It does like to rev, and it makes all kinds of visceral musical sounds. The transfer gears behind your head whine. It's just a very aggressive feel to it. The transmission shifts very well. It is a gated shifter, so you always know where you're at, and it's very positive. It has a fair amount of resistance, but it's better because you don't want to just accidentally throw it in the wrong gear. It's amazing. You sit in it and you're a few inches off the asphalt, and you have this beautiful view of the hood, or the bonnet, as the Brits would call it. These beautifully rounded fenders, and it is just amazing. The windscreen is very broad, and your front vision is very good. Rear vision's not that bad either, because you can actually look behind through the louvers, and of course it does have dual mirrors. When I purchased the car, the distributors were not wired correctly, and I was not aware of that. So I had one of those famous Miura fires. The carburetors caught on fire because it basically backfired viciously. I had that experience twice, and once I was isolated out in the highway, and I emptied an entire large extinguisher to put the fire out. And by the time I used the last drop, my local fire department showed up. But by that point it was extinguished, so I was very fortunate. I have a halon system plumbed into the car right now. You just basically pull a lever and it'll shoot the halon gas towards the engine, and I also, of course, still carry a spare large halon extinguisher as well. It's unfortunate, but this car is a bit of an eye catcher, so you are constantly having people following you, taking pictures of it. And one time I was going down the road, and two cars were coming towards me. There was a minivan in front of a pickup truck, and the pickup car driver was not focusing on the minivan in front of him and was staring at the Miura, and unfortunately the minivan started to turn and he rear-ended right into it. Guy was riding a bicycle, and he was staring at the car while it was parked, and ran off the road and wrecked. So it is an eye catcher, and it's almost dangerous sometimes to take it out. So the Miura has some misconceptions that they go airborne at a certain speed. Well, I've had this one up to 145 miles an hour without an issue. The trick is you basically make sure you have a full tank of gas, and that helps with the weight distribution. It was very stable at 145, so that's a major myth, but it's a myth because basically people test drove these things in the 60s with, say, an eighth tank of gas and would go 175 miles an hour, and yeah, sometimes the front end would float around for sure. But I think in today's driving conditions, especially in the United States, you're never going to have to worry about the car becoming an airplane. So 2 years ago, I had to rebuild the Miura's engine. It basically blew a head gasket, and it started a sequence of events that ended up with me mechanically restoring much of the car. Somehow, a lot of my friends got excited about this project, and they would come in and sporadically help me with it. It was a really neat experience. We had to lift the engine up, and that's a process that would take me probably an hour to explain in itself. We basically had to loosen the engine, pull it out to a certain degree, pull the heads out. We sent the heads to a machine shop and had them rebuilt, so it has new valves, new valve guides, springs. Basically replaced a lot of seals, gaskets. It was all on the top end that we did most of the work. And then I rebuilt the brakes, the master cylinder, I rebuilt right here. It was basically all done here in my shop, other than the machining of the heads. Yeah, if I had sent this to a shop, it probably would have cost about $100,000 to have done everything we did here. So money savings was a big reason why I did it here. The other is I'm mechanically capable. I've been restoring motorcycles and cars for decades. So for me, it was a personal, emotional journey for me and for a lot of my friends. So this Lamborghini has very unusual looking headlights if you're used to the eyelashes that pop up. These are the Jota ones, it's spelled J-O-T-A. Bob Wallace, who was the test driver, the original test driver for Lamborghini, made a one-off car, and it was for racing purposes, but unfortunately they never raced it because they had their own financial issues, and it was a Jota, and it was probably the most radical Miura ever built. It had this style headlights, which are fixed, look more like the kind you'd find on a Ferrari Dino, for example. I do like how it looks this way from the side profile. I prefer the stock setup when you're looking at it from the front. And I still have kept this setup. I have everything to convert it back to stock. So the question is, why haven't I converted it back to stock? Basically, that paint job is something that cannot be redone. The quality of the paint back when this was painted was a much higher standard than what we use today. And for me to be able to mimic that quality paint job, it'll be impossible. So that's the first reason. And the second is that I can't bring myself to taking a grinder to that front end. I do all the work myself, so it's a very hard thing to do, to bring a grinder and cut open the Miura's nose. It would require cutting and welding and that sort of thing, and then repainting the entire car front to back. And once again, the paint job will never be as durable or as glossy as this one. So this is my wall of madness. I collect Lamborghini paraphernalia, Ferrari as well, and other makes. I collect die-cast models. I have models that I used to build when I had time. I still keep the boxes to these models. I guess I just am a car collector junkie. A lot of these are original posters. That one I had over my bedroom when I was a kid. This one my brother actually had made for me. So this sign here, which is an original from the 60s, it's a Schaefer beer sign which used the Miura. It has a story of its own. A friend of mine was traveling and stopped at a restaurant and saw an exact sign like this and tried to find the owner to ask if he would sell it because he wanted to give it to me. And the owner was nowhere to be found, and he went home and looked it up on eBay of all places and found this exact sign, and he called me and told me about it. And I looked it up on eBay and did a reasonable bid on it, and I actually ended up winning it. My Miura, when it was original, was yellow as well. And I thought it looked really familiar in a sense. And I look at the car, and it has the exact same chrome spinners that mine has, which is kind of unusual because usually they were painted the same color as the wheels. It has the dual mirrors in the exact same location that mine has. It even has, and it's being hidden by this mug of beer, a slight dent right there, very minor. Well, guess what? When I bought mine, it had that dent. Basically, I was looking at my car back in the 60s, and that just made every hair on my body stick straight up when I finally realized that. Did I ever think the car would be worth over $1 million when I bought it? No, not even once. I was astonished at how valuable these cars have become. I purchased this for $60,000, and now it's worth well over $1 million. But that doesn't mean anything to me because I'm still going to use it and enjoy it. And again, I have no intention of ever selling it. So its value is sort of non-consequential for me. I don't really think about what's my next car, and I honestly don't need another car. What I think about is how thankful I'll be if I can keep and maintain what I already have without having to sell them later on in life. So, next car doesn't even cross my mind.